Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
House Intelligence Committee announcing tonight that they found no evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia and that they are shutting down their year-long investigation without consulting Democrats on that same committee. I want to bring in now Congressman Adam Schiff. He is the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, we appreciate you joining us here this evening. How did you find out that the investigation is shutting down and this Republican report is finding no collusion by the president?
Well, and this is sort of typical these days. I found out by reading in the newspaper. The Republicans leaked it to the press before even informing us. But, Dawn, it doesn't come as a complete surprise. The Republicans have said for some time they're under immense pressure to shut down the investigation. And it was apparent really from the very beginning, from last March when our chairman went on that midnight run to the White House, that their real object was protecting the president. It wasn't doing a credible investigation. And so they went through the motions of bringing witnesses in, and we learned a great deal through those witnesses. But when we needed to compel them to answer questions, when people like Steve Bannon would stonewall, or Corey Lewandowski or others, all too often they were willing to accept no for an answer. They would ask, very conclusory questions like, did you conspire, did you conclude? And if they said no, the Republicans were content to leave it at that. That's not conducting an investigation. That's going through the motions. So the fundamental problem from the beginning was that my colleagues viewed their job as protecting their client, the president, rather than getting to the truth. And I think that's a grave disservice to the country.
So what happened? I'm sure you voiced your concerns about that. Democrats in that committee, did they not voice their concerns? Did you voice your concerns, and how was it received?
Of course we voiced our concerns. We've given the majority the names of witnesses that were key individuals that were never brought before the committee that we needed to bring in. We gave them lists of documents that we should be subpoenaing. Records, for example,
do you have any
Twitter,
examples of any of what you just said, what you needed to bring in?
Yes, no, absolutely. There are witnesses, for example, who are aware of the Trump Tower meeting before it took place. That would be natural to bring in before the committee. What did you know? How did you find out about it? Who communicated to you what the purpose of the meeting was? There are phone records associated with that meeting that would identify potentially whether the president's son talked to the president about that meeting. There are contradictions between witnesses. Just this week, for example, it was revealed that George Nader had informed the special counsel that he facilitated these meetings, or this meeting in the Seychelles that Eric Prince had with this Russian banker as a way of setting up a secret back channel. That contradicts the sworn testimony of Eric Prince before our committee. But the Republicans have decided they just would rather not know who's telling the truth. They don't want to pursue any further this investigation if it may lead to something that would harm the president and their party. And that's, I think, deeply regrettable. Now, we'll continue to do the investigation to the best that we can. We continue to have people cooperating with us who want to share information with our committee. But obviously, it's going to be a great impediment to our learning the full facts that they're trying to shut this down this way.
Let's talk a little bit more about what you have been saying, because when this first started, almost from the beginning, Devin Nunes has been working to undermine the investigation. Characterize what his role has been. Do you think that he scuttled this investigation? Was he the one behind this, or is it a group effort?
Well, the short history of this is almost 1 year ago, March 20th, we had the first open hearing of our investigation. That hearing was with James Comey. I laid out in my opening statement all of the allegations that needed to be investigated, and I posed the question, could we do this in a bipartisan way? And I pointed out that the national interest really called upon us to do this in a bipartisan way. In that hearing, James Comey dropped the bombshell that the Trump campaign had been under investigation since July of the election year for possible collusion with Russia for counterintelligence purposes. And the Republicans found that hearing, they told me thereafter, was a tragedy for them, was a terrible development for them. And I'm sure the White House came down hard on the chairman of our committee because it was the very next day after that hearing that the chairman went on that midnight run.
You think that Nunes was acting at the behest of the president?
Well, he was certainly acting in the interest of the president and has all along. Even when he was forced to step aside from the committee, he continued to do the bidding of the White House by attempting to impugn the credibility of the Department of Justice and the FBI by taking up basically the storyline, the narrative that the president wanted to tell. And that continued through the release of that partisan Nunes memo, and it's been a continuing problem. The only tool that Democrats have had, the only tool that I have had to force the majority to bring any witnesses in, to seek any information, is by pointing the public spotlight on how they were conducting the investigation. That was the only tool we had. We, I think, used it effectively at times, but it's no substitute for having a subpoena.
I got to ask you a quick thing. One of our intelligence experts here on CNN said that both you and Republicans he said you spent too much time on CNN, and he said that Devin Nunes spent too much time at the White House, and that this investigation, as it relates to Congress, really had no chance because it was partisan from all along, from the beginning. How do you respond to that?
There's always a tendency in the interest of appearing to be nonpartisan to say a pox on both houses. But really, I think that just avoids the hard work of assigning responsibility. Yes, we have gone on television to say the Republicans need to bring Steve Bannon back in, or Don Jr. made a false claim of privilege, because it was the only way to hold the majority accountable. It was the only way to force them at times to do the work that needed to be done. And I think that was important for us to do. It's how I think the country learned where the administration was stonewalling the committee and where the majority was really not living up to its constitutional obligation. So I think it really is all too easy and a bit of a cop-out to say, well, a pox on both their houses. The reality is the mission of the chairman from the beginning was to protect the president, not follow the facts wherever they would lead. And that was a fundamental problem that we had to deal with, and it left us in the position of either going along with essentially a whitewash or calling out the majority every step of the way. And that's the course I think we were forced to take.
Congressman Adam Schiff, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Don.
It is Tuesday, the 13th of March of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, folks. Oh yeah, a little bit of hot paprika, hot Hungarian paprika in that dish. Oh yeah. Well, it shouldn't come as a surprise that the GOP is shutting down the House Intel Committee investigation of Trump and Russia. That was Adam Schiff, and it isn't a surprise, just as it is not a surprise that as soon as Rex Tillerson said that, yeah, Russia is going to be sanctioned for poisoning ex-Russian spies in Great Britain, and Great Britain is in an uproar over it, and they said military-grade nerve agent was administered on their soil and injured not only the two targets, but 21 other people plus a couple of cops. And Rex Tillerson said, that's really bad, and now Rex Tillerson is fired. Yep, Huckabee Sanders could not say Russia when she was asked about Russia being implicated by the UK government. They could not say Russia. Devin Nunes could be going to jail. Unfortunately, I keep hearing that when the Democrats take over, there will be hearings. No, there won't. Because we won't want to, cause the divisiveness that occurs when we have these trials. And it'll start all over again. I hate being a pessimist. I've seen it before. I hope that we actually follow through this time. I know the danger involved. To the other side, it will look like we're just out for revenge. But we're not the ones that said lock him up on the campaign trail either, are we? All right. Well, what do we have on the rest of the menu today? Well, I'll tell you. ICE spokesman James Schwab has quit, saying he could not bear the burden of lying for the Trump administration. Just can't do it. There's somebody actually with a moral direction. Ivanka is caught making $1 million using the White House to sell real estate. Well, why not? Business is business. They're running government like a business. And the widow of ex-spy Alexander Litvinenko says the UK should sanction Russian individuals under the Magnitsky Act over the recent poisonings there. Then after the break, we'll move to the chef's table to examine a federal court ruling that the Trump administration broke the law by failing to implement the smog rule under the Clean Air Act. And the Department of Homeland Security's constant vetting initiative is a Muslim ban by algorithm. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. If you go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the right of the page there is the chat room link, and that is monitored by our roaring girl, Kelly Lincoln, quite diligently throughout the day, I might add. To the leftish of the chat room link are the donate contribute buttons, and thank you for your generosity. I need to mention again, we're in the process of figuring out how to migrate from the old accounts to a new one, and we haven't quite figured out how to do that. So, but thank you for your generosity, and we'll keep you apprised of. Hopefully, it will be seamless and everything will be fine. Okay. Otherwise, we may have to announce for those of you who are recurring contributors to I don't know. Recur it at the new links that we'll have to put up. So we'll let you know about that. Okay, and podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy can be had initially by way of Spreaker, and from there it emanates to YouTube, TuneIn, hopefully iTunes, Stitcher, etc., etc., etc. Also, do follow us at Twitter at netrootsradio.com. I'm sorry, not .com, at netrootsradio. And you can follow me at Justice Putnam. Those are, of course, both on Twitter. I put up show notes and links on a Daily Coast diary, usually around 10 minutes before showtime. And you can find that by following me or just looking up me on Daily Coast as Justice Putnam. Okay. Music. Yes, I don't want to forget music because that is provided by the fabulous and lovely Frances Livings. And she performs all over Southern California, so check her out if you're down there or passing through. And there are links to her work on my Daily Coast Diary. So do check that out and buy her stuff, please. Okay, so ICE spokesman quits. This is an article out of Raw Story by Elizabeth Pressa. Immigration and Customs Enforcement spokesman James Schwab resigned from his role with the San Francisco division, citing the burden of spreading falsehoods from Donald Trump and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Okay, well, they're both very adept at lying. In fact, Sessions has lied at least 3 times in Congress, in public, with the cameras rolling. Schwab accused Sessions and acting director Tom Homan, I hate that director Tom Homan of ICE, boy, of deliberately spreading misleading information after ICE slammed Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf's decision to warn the public about upcoming ICE raids. Sanctuary jurisdictions like San Francisco and Oakland shield dangerous criminal aliens from federal law enforcement at the expense of public safety, Homan said of Schaaf's warning. Because these jurisdictions prevent ICE from arresting criminal aliens in the secure confines of a jail, they also force ICE officers to make more arrests out in the community, which poses increased risks for law enforcement and the public. Nice little community that you got there. We'd hate to, hurt a few innocent bystanders. Yeah, Homan has a Teutonic ring to it, doesn't it? He continued, 864 criminal aliens and public safety threats remain at large in the community. Wow. Sounds like people he's talking about. You wouldn't know it. And I have to believe that some of them were able to elude us thanks to the mayor's irresponsible decision. Okay. Anne Frank, ICE Director Homan. Anne Frank. Jesus. Well, Director Homan and the Attorney General said there were 800 people at large and free to roam because of the actions of the Oakland mayor, Schwab told CNN. Personally, I think her actions were misguided and not responsible. I think she could have had other options. But to blame her for 800 dangerous people out there is just false. Schwab said, I quit because I didn't want to perpetuate misleading facts. I asked them to change the information, he said. I told them that the information was wrong. They asked me to deflect, and I could not agree with that. Then I took some time and I quit. Schwab told CNN he'd never been in a situation, quote, where someone asked me to deflect when we absolutely knew something was awry, end quote. I just couldn't bear the burden, continuing on as a representative of the agency and charged with upholding integrity, knowing that the information was false, Schwab also said. He summed up, it's the job of the public affairs officer to offer transparency for the agency you work for. I felt like we were not doing that. I've never been in a situation when I've been asked to ignore the facts because it was more convenient. It was my first time being asked to do that. Well, I think that Trump and the others would just say this guy's just too establishment. Morality, ethics, how old-fashioned. Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. I got to warn you, if you're allergic to hot Hungarian paprika, beware. Okay, this offering is by Matthew Chapman out of Share Blue Media. Now, The Trump boys rightly get taken to task for their egregious business dealings that, well, it doesn't really border on corruption because it is absolutely corrupt. But Ivanka really slips under the radar, and she may be the most egregious of the Trump offspring in the totality, extent, and breadth of her corruption. She gets a pass. Matthew Chapman here says that Ivanka Trump is every bit as compromised as the rest of the administration, and a new report finds her to make millions from her family's private business while serving in her advisory role in the White House. Well, she doesn't really work there, but she does. They'll say both. Oh, yeah, she works there, but she doesn't really work there. According to McClatchy, Trump will pull in more than $1 million a year from the family business that has continued to develop luxury resorts across the globe during the Trump presidency. And this comes even as she is doing everything from lobbying the Senate on tax policy to representing her father at a G20 summit of world leaders. Boy, can you imagine Chelsea Clinton doing anything like that? Jeez. She would have been thrown in jail just for mentioning that she was going to do it. I'm not talking about businesses. I'm talking about representing her mom somewhere in the world. Okay. Furthermore, the properties she oversees are hiring state-owned companies for construction, receiving gifts from foreign governments in the form of public land or eased regulations, and accepting payments from customers who are foreign officials. Look, we are naive. We just don't know how business works. And, there's graft, bribery, extortion, making offers that people can't refuse. Business. It's not personal. It's business. And when they've done you the business, you hope. And this is not the first time Trump has profited from her role in her father's administration. She has also been accused of ethics violations related to the promotion of her Made in China line of clothing. Already, Trump's White House position is a legal minefield, and she brought a checkered business past, having narrowly escaped indictment in New York for falsifying sales records. I think maybe what that is that you are taxed or there's an assessment on square footage and sales receipts. Okay. And of course, she appears to have no real expertise in policy. She did not understand basic aspects of the GOP tax bill, even as she promoted it on TV. She thinks universal child care can be achieved by giving herself a tax cut. And she said, low-income parents should consider food for their kids in an investment like Mommy and Me classes. Wow. Moreover, despite the belief held by some that Trump supports women's rights, she largely agrees with her father on rolling back those protections. And around the world, few people take her seriously as an advocate for women. Trump has said it is not my job to change her father's mind on policy, though that begs the question of what she thinks a White House advisor's job description actually is. Instead, Ivanka appears to view her government job as a new way to enrich herself, just like her father. up here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article by Frank Jordans, who writes for the AP, and I got this by way of the Washington Post. The widow of a former Russian intelligence officer who died after he fled to Britain said that the British government should respond to the poisoning of another ex-spy by sanctioning individuals suspected of committing crimes abroad. Marina Litvinenko, whose husband died in London after drinking tea containing a radioactive material, said that following the recent poisoning of Sergei Skripal and his daughter, the UK should join other countries in targeting individuals named in the U.S. Magnitsky Act for sanctions. The act lets Washington sanction human rights violators. It was passed in 2012 by Congress in response to the death of Russian lawyer Sergei Magnitsky, who died in a Moscow prison after exposing a tax fraud scheme involving Russian officials. Look, Putin is just cleaning up, okay? Loyalty is paramount in the structure of a strongman thug mob government that is run in that part of the world right now. I might also add the type that Trump hopes to be. He's just cleaning up, folks. Okay. Well, Litvinenko's husband, Alexander Litvinenko, died in November 2006, 3 weeks after drinking the poison tea. A UK public inquiry concluded in 2016. Took him 10 years. He'd been killed by Russia's security service. Britain is a popular destination for wealthy Russians, including some with close Kremlin ties, as well as Russians feeling threatened at home. I would think Paris would be better, but you never know. When you allow these people to use your country for holiday, for buying property, to raise their children, it means you allow them to do everything, Marina Litvinenko said in an interview with the AP. The attack on Skripal would increase anxiety among Russian exiles in Britain, particularly for people who are asking for political asylum if the government fails to take tougher action, she said. Calls have grown in Britain for the government to draw up its own Magnitsky list following the attack in Salisbury, England. Skripal and his daughter were found comatose on a public bench on March 4th. They remain in critical condition after suspected poisoning with a nerve agent. Well, it's no longer suspected. Theresa May came out and said, we know exactly what it is. We know what class it is. It can only be done by a state actor. And we know who that state actor is, and is Vladimir Putin and Russia. And the United States cannot come to the aid of a NATO ally. Wait until Article 5 is invoked. We'll see whether the rubber hits the road on that one then, won't we? British Prime Minister Theresa May said that Russia was responsible for the attack, and the Kremlin has denied involvement. They do deny all the time, even when there are a lot of facts, said Litvinenko, noting that Russia rejected having a role in her husband's death. Litvinenko said the latest poisoning called into question a written promise she said she received in 2012 from Theresa May, who was Britain's Home Secretary at the time, to take every step to protect the UK and its people from such a crime ever being repeated again. And that was Theresa May in 2006. When I received 1 week ago all this news from Salisbury from the UK, I realized nothing was done, Litvinenko summed up. Indeed. Okay, well, this story is still developing, and developing to the point that Rex Tillerson has been summarily fired for daring mention that Russia was involved in the UK attack. Let's be clear about that. Now they want Pompeo in there? Well, there's only about 6 people left in the State Department, and Putin wanted Rex Tillerson in the State Department to dismantle it, so the work has been done. All right, let's get to our break. We'll come back and meet up at the chef's table, go through the weather from around the world, and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, you can let this sparrow fly away. As someone who won acclaim playing older characters, it's a bit odd to see Jennifer Lawrence playing someone her own age. Red Sparrow's Dominica has more than a touch in common with Katniss Everdeen, the heroine from the Hunger Games franchise that made Lawrence a star. Dominica comes from the same kind of background, only there's a lot more sexual content here. After an injury finishes her dancing career, Dominica reluctantly signs up to be a Russian Secret Service agent at the behest of her creepy, Kremlin-connected Uncle Ivan, played convincingly by Mateusz Schonartz, who's best known as the villain from the Bond flick Casino Royale. Dominica doesn't have much of a choice since her options are that, or death in the eviction of her ill mother, played by Jolie Richardson in an all-too-brief role. The Sparrows aren't just undercover agents, they're honeypots trained to do whatever it takes, including creative forms of sex, to get the job, usually information extraction, done. Dominica's first assignment is to seduce CIA agent Nate Nash, who has been receiving information from a high-ranking Russian mole. What follows is a fairly smart and well-paced game of cat and mouse, where no one or thing is quite as it appears. However, the movie ultimately falls flat despite a strong supporting cast, including Charlotte Rampling and Jeremy Irons. The reason for this is that, try as she might, Lawrence is not really convincing as either a Russian or a spy. With an accent that seems to come and go, and surprisingly little chemistry with Joel Edgerton, who plays Nate, the film doesn't reach its potential. Lawrence has done, and doubtlessly will do, better work. Star power casting didn't work here. You can wait for Red Sparrow on cable. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As the days get longer and the weather warms, people of all ages will start to spring into action. Spring is a great time to breathe fresh air, stretch your arms and legs, and get physically active outdoors. Lack of physical activity contributes to obesity, heart disease, stroke, and other chronic health conditions. Fortunately, many communities are making it easier and safer to be physically active. Neighborhoods across the country are working together to create more public spaces for walking, running, biking, and other physical activities. Adults should get at least 150 minutes of physical activity each week, and children should get 60 minutes a day. If you find it hard to walk to a local recreation center, park, or playground, learn how to make your neighborhood a place that makes healthy living easier. Visit makinghealtheasier.org for information about ways communities can change to get more people outside and moving.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Civic participation means taking part in formal political processes and taking part in community activities outside of government. Millions of Americans participate in thousands of voluntary organizations and associations. These organizations seek to improve the life of the community in many different ways. Some benefit the poor, sick, or elderly people. Other organizations are concerned with the environment, healthcare, or the needs of children. They deal with many other community problems and issues. Participating in these organizations gives community members the means to deal with community issues. It also allows them to participate in the way organizations are run. Government must deal with some matters, such as arresting lawbreakers or establishing rules for building safety. However, there are other issues where government works with voluntary organizations to solve community problems. In other cases, voluntary organizations act by themselves to address community issues. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Every decade or so, America's mass media are surprised to discover that migrant farm workers are still being miserably paid and despicably treated by the industry that profits from their labor. Stories run, the public is outraged again, assorted officials pledge action, then nothing changes. News reports recently have redocumented that the shameful abuse of these hard-working, hard-traveling families continues. A Los Angeles Times report revealed that even if they receive the legal minimum wage, many farm laborers earn less than $17,500 a year because of the low pay and the seasonal nature of their work. Moreover, they're often housed in shacks, old chicken coops, shipping containers, and squalid motels. This year, though, multi-billion-dollar agribusiness interests from Florida to California are uniting in a push for new assistance, not for workers, but themselves. While they back Trump for president, many are now expressing shock that he may actually try to fulfill his campaign promise to cut off the flow of undocumented immigrants to their fields. They now admit that these immigrants make up as much as 70% of the industry's workforce, so they've rushed to Washington, demanding a special exemption from their president's planned lockout of Mexican laborers. In the process, they've suddenly recharacterized the very migrants they've been so callously mistreating as noble employees who are essential to the USA's food security. This is Jim Hightower saying Big Ag deserves no special break at all. But if Trump and Congress give any help to them, they should be required to pay a living wage, provide decent family housing and health care, and treat all farm workers with the respect due to people who really are essential to our food security. To help push for basic human justice, connect with the United Farm Workers at ufw.org.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with a selection of today's top world news headlines. China's parliament has overturned the country's presidential term limits, approving constitutional changes on Sunday that would allow President Xi Jinping to serve indefinitely. That vote in the National People's Congress wasn't even close, with 2,957 votes in favor compared to just 2 noes and 3 abstentions. If you didn't think President Xi's weekend could get any better, think again. China's parliament also enshrined what's known as Xi Jinping thought into the constitution, essentially weaving Xi's political agenda into the official fabric of the Chinese government. The parliament also set up a new commission to investigate corruption among Communist Party officials, and that commission will operate behind closed doors and outside of China's formal judiciary system. Since coming into power 5 years ago, some 1.5 million Communist Party members have been punished for a range of alleged corruption offenses. And days after President Trump issued exemptions on new steel and aluminum tariffs to Canada, Mexico, and Australia, several other key U.S. allies are clamoring for exemptions of their own. Chief among them, Brazil, the European Union, Japan, and South Korea. On Monday morning, Trump took to Twitter to announce his Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, is entering into talks with EU officials to encourage them to pare back trade barriers on U.S. agriculture, presumably in return for exemptions on the steel and aluminum tariffs. Another country trying to get face time with the Trump administration is South Korea. Despite having handed President Trump a potential diplomatic opening on the North Korea crisis, South Korean officials have thus far failed to earn an exemption of their own. The country's finance minister said Sunday he was, quote, deploying all possible means to respond to U.S. steel tariffs measures and making an all-out effort. South Korea is the third largest exporter of steel to the United States. Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays is our daily special. And while we're comfortably ensconced here at the Chef's Table, we will offer you our palate cleanser to start things off. And that's always weather from around the world, and we always begin along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America. It's currently 51 degrees. Yeah, that's much warmer than previous mornings we've had for months on end. Though we will be a bit cooler than yesterday. We went up to about 72 yesterday, and we are expecting a high of 53. So only a couple more degrees than what I'm at right now. And we have copious amounts of water falling from the sky. Yes, indeed, we do have rain. And I have mentioned before that here in Oregon, what we call rain, everywhere else in America, you would call a torrential downpour. And then later on tonight, we're going to have showers, which, when we call it showers here in Oregon, everywhere else, it will be biblical proportions. Pretty much off the scale. There's nowhere else. Maybe the monsoon in Southeast Asia. That might be a lot more rain. Okay. Well, let's see. We currently have winds out of the southwest at 9 miles per hour. We are under an active wind advisory right now. And so we will be getting gusts. Well, the area will be getting gusts from 40 to 60 miles per hour. And the steady winds will increase to 15 to 20. But that's down in the valley floor where I'm at, a little bit more up towards the pass, and in a fairly protected area. Knock on wood. We won't get those gale force gusts. Thank God. But we will increase winds to 10 to 15 miles per hour a little bit later today with the winds out of the north, and then they'll shift again out of the west tonight at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and we will be under this active wind advisory through tomorrow. How fun. Pressure is falling at 29.63 inches. Visibility is down to 2 miles, and humidity is 82%, though my little digital weather station here, where the mothership is for Netroots Radio, says that the humidity is a little bit higher than that at 94%. So, okay. Let's see. Air quality index is good at 28, but that's getting into moderate. And, okay, now weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. London is 51 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 55 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 61 and partly cloudy, and they are under a wind advisory. Kiev is 38 and partly cloudy. Kabul is 51 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong, 65, partly cloudy. Tokyo is 54 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 66 with rain. San Francisco, California is 57 degrees with rain. And New York is 33 degrees Fahrenheit with light snow. Oh, is it sticking? Well, that's New York for you. And that is also weather from around the world. Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. Did you know that everyone deserves to breathe clean air, and because of the Clean Air Act, we're legally entitled to it? Indeed. It's the law of the land. And this article by Yvette Cabrera out of Think Progress points out that a federal judge in California ruled that the nation's top environmental official, EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, violated the law by missing the deadline to implement the agency's ozone pollution rule. In his decision, Federal District Court Judge Haywood Sterling Gilliam Jr., I guess I would make him the second, wrote that Pruitt broke the law under the Clean Air Act by failing to identify which areas in the U.S. have smog levels that violate the nation's ozone health standards. Well, we know Scott Pruitt, he's building that cone of silence. Now, everybody thinks that it's because there's some sort of weird, well, it is a weird place to communicate. And it's a skiff inside of his office. And the worry is that who is he communicating with? Is it with lobbyists, industry executives? What is he doing? Well, Pruitt has admitted that all of his policy decisions comes from divine communication. And he says God actually literally speaks to him. So I think the little cone of silence is the hearing room in which God invokes policy decisions on our puny little planet. Because that's how great God is, even though he's pretty busy, and it's definitely a he. Pretty damn busy being God, and when you consider the immensity of the universe, everything, worried about not only who's going to win the football game on Sunday, but how EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt will devise and implement policy. And God never said anything about smog levels, ozone levels. Those don't exist anyway. They're not a problem. I think that's what the problem is that God hasn't spoken to Scott Pruitt about what those ozone health standards would be. The EPA revised its national ambient air quality standards in 2015 under the Obama administration, but Pruitt missed the October 1, 2017 deadline to announce the areas that were in compliance under the ozone pollution rule. Pruitt subsequently announced findings only for areas in compliance, not those out of compliance. There is no dispute as to liability. Defendants admit that the administrator violated his non-discretionary duty under the Clean Air Act, the judge wrote. He also ordered the EPA to publish its findings for most of the country by next month, on April 30th, and by July 17th for 8 counties in San Antonio, Texas, rejecting the agency's request for more time to determine whether those counties are violating the ozone standard. God, these people. Mustafa Santiago Ali, a senior advisor for environmental justice and community revitalization in the Obama EPA, said he was pleased with the court's decision, but is also displeased with the Trump administration's slow pace in tackling the pollution problem across the country. Every day they move slowly, they place our most vulnerable communities, especially our children's lives, in jeopardy, Ali said. Design, not a bug. We're handing over America to a foreign hostile power that writes everything in Cyrillic. Do they really care about little kids dying of bad air? Flint, Michigan still doesn't have any clean water. How long has that been going on? And it's not because of both siderisms. God, I got into another one of these both siderisms on Facebook or somewhere recently. No, one side does it. And we know which one it is. It's not the ones that said, don't pull that water from over there. It's too acidic. We've already gone through it. The pipes aren't going to handle it. And they did it anyway. Because when people are occupying properties that you want to redevelop, the value of that property is much higher when it's vacant than when it's occupied. A little bit of, geoengineering. Okay, everyone deserves to breathe clean air. And because of the Clean Air Act, we're legally entitled to it. The court got it right when it ordered the EPA to finish making ozone designations sooner than the agency requested. Okay, well, they're going to slow walk this anyway, and it doesn't matter what a court says. You know, laws, they don't need no stinking laws.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Okay, finishing up here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays is an article out of Just Security magazine by Faiza Patel and Harsha Panduranga. Now, late last week, the Congressional Black Caucus wrote to the Department of Homeland Security urging it to stop ICE's extreme vetting initiative, saying that the program would unfairly target minority communities that the CBC represents. The initiative, now relabeled Visa Lifestyle Vetting. Oh, I'm sorry, Visa Life Cycle Vetting. Visa Life Cycle Vetting. Yeah, it's not the Extreme Vetting Initiative anymore. It's Visa Life Cycle Vetting. Is an effort to develop an automated system to continuously monitor visitors and immigrants to the United States by looking at what they say, including on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, among other things. The system is meant to predict whether a traveler will be a positively contributing member of society and contribute to national interests. They're visiting our country, and they have to show extreme loyalty and fealty to this country. I have some ex-in-laws from France that would probably take exception to that. They are, I don't know, some might say virulently French. Yes, right down to the tisk-tisk. And they probably won't be bringing their old school, old world, aristocratic money here. Let's be clear. I know she was slumming, but she found out quick. Well, quick enough. It is required to generate a minimum of 10,000 annual investigative leads. Nice. The CBC's letter is timely after sounding out potential contractors about the technical feasibility of such a program last summer. ICE just published an acquisition forecast that indicates it intends to go forward with spending $100 million on the project. Why feed kids? Why keep families together when you can spend money this way? Because believe me, they won't stop with the people visiting this country. They're going to follow everybody in America about what they say. And if you don't show enough loyalty, you're out of here. Doesn't matter how many generations you've been. We're all a nation of immigrants then. It is likely to be money wasted. As 54 leading technologists pointed out in a letter to DHS, no algorithm can make judgments about such subjective matters as who will make a positive contribution to society, which in any event seems irrelevant for people who, for example, just want to visit Disneyland. Nor can a computer predict in any reliable way if a person intends to commit a terrorist attack, which occur too rarely to allow for an accurate forecast. Yeah, there's more examples of violent school shootings with mass killings in which to be able to show a tendency. You can write an algorithm for that. And what are we talking here? Minority report bullshit. Forecasting someone's future criminal activity. Yeah, there's going to be some subjective analysis on that. You know it, especially if there's politics involved. Because they're going to track people's contributions to society. Well, they might say actually spending money at Disneyland is a contribution to society. An American citizen who wants her brother in Iraq to get a visa so he can visit will certainly think twice before sending out tweets criticizing U.S. policy towards that country. The initiative appears to be part of a broader paradigm shift in how those coming to the U.S. are vetted continuously instead of at gatekeeping intervals like during visa issuance and entry into the country. In January, DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen testified to the Senate that we are ensuring that individuals are continuously vetted rather than only at the time of the application. In February, Trump issued a presidential memorandum creating a national vetting enterprise. Oh, yeah. Leave it to a guy who knows how to brand a building to call it National Vetting Enterprise. And we're not talking about the USS Enterprise sailing on the ocean blue or through the vast reaches of space to places we've never gone to before. Specifying that it was U.S. policy to process biographic, biometric, and contextual information on a recurrent basis to identify security threats, like those who haven't shown enough fealty to dear leader, Herr Führer. This is a significant change in how the U.S. treats those who come to its shores as visitors or immigrants and requires, at a minimum, a full airing of the need for such an expansion, its feasibility, and its costs. After all, our existing visa vetting system is among the world's most thorough and effective. But that's part of the old establishment. We've got to tear it down because there's a new kid in town, and he writes in Cyrillic. And I'm not just tinfoil hat stuff here. Trust me. Believe me. Okay, we've come to the end of our broadcast period for today. But there's going to be some great breaking news throughout the day that will be announced during the live content throughout the day. So stay tuned. And we will visit with you tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Yes. It's Wednesdays already. Smothered Benedict. It might just be an egg dish with hollandaise, so beware on that one, too. All right. It's been great, and do stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day, and we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.